Japan bilateral trade with India total 20.57 billion USD business during financial year 2021 to 22. Exports from Japan in India during this period were 14.39 billion USD. Imports were estimated 6.18 billion USD. Japan's export to India were 2.35% of India's total import. India exports to Japan were 1.46% of India's total export. This underlines that there remains a huge potential, and it means this is the time to shift to top gear. And for the presentation, I would like to call Mr. Bhupendra Singh, Managing Partner, Artham Law Chambers.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Shefali. I must say that you have taken some of the thunder while giving out the data points. Nevertheless, we'll try to make it quick because I've been put under oath that I have to finish my session in 30 minutes. I know it's lunchtime, so all of us must be worrying to get off the hook at least by 1:30 or 1:40, right? So with that agenda in mind, let's quickly jump into our discussion topic. As Shefali mentioned, what we are going to talk about is that what are the areas of opportunities in Indo-Japan bilateral trade, right? We have some numbers here on the slide deck. We'll quickly run through it, and there are certain opportunities and could be certain threats, if not threats, some challenges which both the countries might have to sail through in next couple of years' time. Great, thanks. All right, so some fun facts. I'll repeat certain of those. So if you look at it, the total trade volume between both the countries until 2022 has been $20 billion. Now you just look at the difference here. When we talk about imports into India, it stands at $14 billion. But when we talk about the exports to Japan, $6 billion. It is not to undermine what we have achieved in last 10 years. Last 10 to 15 years, we have seen at least 5 to 7% year-on-year growth for exports from India to Japan. But when we look at the overall scheme of things, which will come into the subsequent slides, we will see that yes, there is a lot to cover, at least from the Indian export side, and not just services sector, but also from the goods side. Now, when we see that, okay, what could be the reasons for this kind of trade deficit, what economists would like to call it, which is 14 billion vis-a-vis 6 billion, one of the reasons what you might have read or heard about is CEPA, which is the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement between India and Japan, as compared to RCEP, which is Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. So CEPA is a bilateral trade treaty between India and Japan, where certain goods are listed with specific customs tariff that the customs duties cannot go beyond a particular threshold. While we talk about RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Partnership Agreement, it is ASEAN countries, Australia, New Zealand, but excluding India. Now, what impact it might have had on the trade, or it may have in the coming years, again, in few slides down the line, we are going to discuss it. So, what we have tried to populate here in this particular slide is nothing fancy, just 2 data points. Japan as an economy, as a country, what is their global trade? So, when we look at it, exports from Japan to world over approximately stands at around $700 billion, while imports into Japan again from world over stands to $800 billion. Now this will give a perspective where we as a country or bilateral trade stands. So just look at the countries of imports. So blue blocks are countries from where Japan is importing, orange blocks where Japan is exporting. So China stands to be at the highest level, approximately 23 to 24%, followed by USA. But when we come to India, which is India's export to Japan, it stands around 1.5% in Japan's total economy. Now, this gives a reflection that, okay, what is it that is missing between these two countries as far as the global trade is concerned? There are certain key products, certain key services which can still be worked upon, but at the end of the day, the numbers are quite significant. Similarly, when we look at the export side, the picture remains more or less same. In the recently published report by the Ministry of External Affairs and Ministry of Commerce, Government of India, and many of you might have read, US has become India's biggest trading partner. Now, when we talk about the India's biggest trading partner, it's goods and services put together both. Now in that entire list, US is followed by China, and between the two countries, India and Japan, Japan stands at the 10th number in the overall ranking. When we look on the other side, which is India standing in Japan's trade, the picture remains more or less the same. So going back to the first slide, that what exactly is going on. So when we look at CEPA, right, Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, it was signed way back in 2011 with lots of kind of, anticipation, because a lot of products, the trade between India and Japan, specifically goods, the customs duties were reduced significantly. Just as a quick reference, is the duty which gets levied when you are importing goods into any country. In India, the highest rate is 15% of the value of goods, and the average rate is 7.5%. But when we get into these kind of bilateral trade treaties, this 7.5% can come down as low as zero ordinarily. So when this agreement got signed in 2011, from 2011 to 13, there was significant and sharp increase of export of goods from India to Japan, because the quality of goods, the benefits which were provided under the agreement, they were significant. And since then, we are looking at on an average 5% increase. But if you look at last 5 years data, that 5% increase year on year has plateaued. We are not seeing any significant growth. We are not able to breach that 5% limit and say that, hey, now we are reaching up to 10%. And again, when we look at the listing of products which gets traded between both the countries, it's not the case that either India or Japan, we do not have those products or we do not have those kind of facilities. Everything is there, but something is definitely missing. Now, what could be that missing angle? In 2021, so the whole discussion started way back in 2018, 2017 about Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. Now, what exactly is RCEP? RCEP, to put you or to mention it briefly, it is a multilateral trade agreement. It simply covers all the ASEAN countries, China, Thailand, Japan, Malaysia, Taiwan, plus Australia, New Zealand. Initially, at the time of RCEP negotiation, India was also part of the negotiation. Come 2021, for various reasons, India stepped out of RCEP. Now, what it means? That all the trading countries in the RCEP bloc, excluding India, they have a free flow of goods and services amongst themselves. Now, India is not part of RCEP. That means goods exported from India to any of these countries, including Japan, they will attract customs duties, and goods imported into India from any of these countries will definitely attract customs duty. Now, this could be some sort of, a no-show, because when we look at this ASEAN bloc, the goods are freely movable without any kind of customs duty. But of course, we did have a specific reason, because in this RCEP bloc, China was one of the member countries, and without having any kind of free trade agreement, bilateral or multilateral with China, we are looking at a huge trade deficit. So in case, hypothetically, government of India would have walked into RCEP, the trade deficit would have just swollen. So because of only this reason, India stepped back from RCEP, but now we are looking at a situation where all other countries may have a better trade scenario when we look at India vis-a-vis the ASEAN bloc. As I was mentioning, now just if we have a quick look at the top 5 items, India's exports and definitely India's imports. So I would like to highlight that from export side, which is India export to Japan, we have got petroleum products, chemicals, fish, textile and jewelry items. But when we talk about India's imports, we have got electrical machinery, iron and steel products, and parts of motor vehicles. Why not motor vehicles? As we all know, Pune being the belt of the auto industry. So we have our own facilities, but as far as parts are concerned, we import significantly from Japan. Now, when we look at these kind of product line items, there does not seem to be any reason that why should we only restrict to these 4 or 5 products, right? Now, when we look at the petroleum products or chemicals, in petroleum products, again, the exports of India to Japan have restricted, or rather I would say have plateaued. Now, we might have read that Reliance, Naira Energy, and there are many more refineries who have actually expanded their production line in petroleum products, including petrochemicals. That being the case, we should kind of thrust ourselves that when the refinery production capacity is increasing, can we look at these two countries as one of the major trading hub for petroleum products. Similarly, chemicals. Chemicals in India, the R&D itself is phenomenal. I know many of European Union companies as well as Asian companies whose R&D centers are also based in India. So they are doing R&D for whole of the world, but at the same time, when we look at the export quantum, the absolute number, that is not something which is so kind of flurry, which we can say that, okay, we are contributing towards the trading bloc. Well, I think I can skip this specific slide because honorable consulate members have already discussed quite a lot about it, and I am already under oath for 30 minutes. The only thing I would like to mention here is the opportunities, right? We all know the infrastructure, investment, and both the countries' commitments as far as the development of India's infrastructure is concerned. But just like I'm taking a vague example, automotive industry, we have got an entire production line, but we have a separate hub only for ancillary units. Okay. Similarly, in infrastructure, we can also have certain clusters which support the entire infrastructure project as such, because today those hubs are not there. So if I'm constructing, let's say, Delhi-Mumbai corridor, and if I'm somewhere in Rajasthan, which is west of India, there's a bright possibility some products, some goods may have to transported either from Delhi or from Gujarat. So we'll have to see those clusters, because the infrastructure projects are not just one-time investment. You'll have to keep investing in those infrastructure projects. So this is an opportunity which we feel that could be quite relevant in the infrastructure sector per se. Now, when we come to the SWOT analysis, just for the reference SWOT, as lawyers, we don't get into all management jargons. Here, on this slide, we are looking at opportunities bare minimum, right? Nothing more, nothing less. Now, let's look at the market size of Japan as a country, $3.2 billion. That's what the value of goods which are being imported. Okay. At the same time, the interesting factor, if you see serial number 1, machinery and mechanical appliances. Okay. So if I have to go back here, India's import, serial number 1, electric machinery, which means India is importing electrical machinery. At the same time, when we look at the data, which is published by World Trade Organization, WTO, Japan also imports machinery and mechanical appliances, and the import bill is $75 billion. Right? Now, this could be an opportunity. Now, yes, people may say, and I have heard during our offline discussion that, okay, as a country, we do not have that kind of, manufacturing facility. But you look at all the production-linked incentive schemes which have been announced by the government. They're across the sectors, right? So what stops us? I don't see any reason, because $75 billion, we have to start somewhere. Today, we are a clear importer of machinery and mechanical parts and appliances. We can be an exporter as well. Similarly, pharmaceuticals, another big one. $30 billion of imports in Japan of pharmaceutical products. In India, if you look at the export items from India to Japan, pharmaceuticals does not even appear in the list. Forget about top 5, top 10. It's not just there. And defense, honorable member also mentioned about the joint military drills which India and Japan have been doing. But at the same time, it has the other side to the whole story. One is the action, right? But at the same time, to prepare yourself for that action, either as a joint military drill or otherwise, you need to have those products. You need to have that technology. And this is where in defense sector, and as government of India has already got into some sort of semi-privatization, it opens up many, many doors for both the countries. As I think one of the panelists mentioned, we have the R&D facilities and they have the technology. We just have to merge together, and I'm sure that we can do wonders as far as the defense sector is concerned. Education, I'm sure that education, many things are being done, including EdTech. Another one is ITES, which is Information Technology Enabled Services, IoT, 5G, online gaming, and cybersecurity. Now, when we talk about cybersecurity and online gaming, trend what we have seen is USA, European Union, few countries from the European Union, they are more into this entire cybersecurity and online gaming. Most of the apps or online gaming systems or software, they are housed in US or the EU. But at the same time, we know as a matter of fact, at least for online gaming and cybersecurity, Japan has that potential. So that being the case, why can't we invest some more in terms of the time, and definitely if required the monetary investment, to bring that forth into Indo-Japan trade relationship. Now, everyone loves to talk about opportunities. Here are few threats. Again, threat is because of the SWOT which management has picked up, but in my view, these are more like challenges. One is international trade remedy measures. Now, these are ad hoc remedy measures. I am importing goods from one particular country. It could be China, it could be Japan, it could be Malaysia, Thailand. As government of India, I get a right to levy additional duties, which could be either anti-dumping, safeguard, or anti-subsidy. Remember it, this is over and above your customs duty, which were 7.5% to 15%. In some cases, we have seen these duties going up to 150% of the value of the goods. The whole purpose why it is permissible under the WTO framework, to make the country self-sufficient, and there should not be any dumped or dumping into a particular country. Then comes the non-tariff barriers. I don't know how many of you would have observed in since 2016, I would say, almost 6 years now, we as a nation are moving away from the trade remedy measures which are listed above to non-tariff measures. Now the reason is that when we talk about trade remedy measures, what it effectively means, as a country I have to defend it before all the countries, then at the WTO. But when I talk about non-tariff barriers, like Bureau of Indian Standards, we as a country are doing nothing. We want quality of the products to be assured. So many of the products now are getting covered under Bureau of Indian Standards, BIS. The list as it stands today, it's 3,000 plus products. Then we have got FSSAI, it's Food Safety Regulatory Authority. Then we have got legal metrology. At the end of the day, customer should know what he or she is buying. So the reflection or the advertisement or the packaging should be compliant with all the legal metrology requirements, so that any layman can understand what he or she is consuming. So these are some challenges. At the end of the day, these are not the challenges in my professional view that can stop the business. See, this is just the way of doing business. Every country, every government will have these kind of requirements. In European Union, you have different standards. In Japan, you'll have different standards. But does it mean that these are challenges or threats? Answer is no. But the objective is to be mindful about these and make sure that at the 11th hour, when goods are about to ship or about to land, we do not get stuck with these kind of non-tariff barriers. I'll take a quick run through of the RCEP, which we had discussed briefly, what RCEP stands for. So these are the countries of RCEP, ASEAN, which is all the listed countries on the right hand side of the slide. Then we have got Japan, China, Australia, South Korea, New Zealand. So all these countries put together, they make a block of RCEP, which has been signed in 2021. Initially, India was part of it, but in 2021, I think August or September, India withdrew from this entire RCEP negotiation. There were some news reports at that point in time that this might kind of create some sort of concerns or questions between the two countries' trading relationship. But fortunately, we have not seen that because of India's decision to withdraw, at least not upfront we have seen, it has had any impact on the trade volume between both the countries. Whatever the numbers are, it is still stagnant at 5%. Well, I think these are some data points. In the interest of time, I can just skip it. These are some interesting parts, okay? Now, what exactly is covered and what exactly is not covered? And here, if you'll see, there are certain opportunities which are in the finer part or the finer bullets of the RCEP agreement. So I'll directly go to the second last point. So if we read the fine print of the RCEP, which is all ASEAN countries, Japan, China, other countries, but excluding India, the details of the goods, they do not cover approximately 39% of Japan's export of food, which effectively means those products, approximately rounding off 40%, those food items which will be exported from Japan, they will not get the duty benefit. So to that extent, we are at a level playing field between RCEP vis-a-vis the bilateral trade of India and Japan. Similarly, if you look at the government procurement, right? Now, government procurement somewhere it can be ousted or it can be kept aside in that entire RC benefit, because in government procurements, as any country does it, the government procurements will be driven primarily by the local laws and the local expectations, which are the country-driven decisions. Whether a block is there, which is a trading block, or no trading block, it generally doesn't make any difference. So this is where we feel that, okay, RCEP is being kind of implemented and it will be given effect to over a period of 3 to 5 years. But at the same time, that's genuinely not the end of the trading relationship. The only thing is that as business communities, both sides, we really have to find the ways and alternatives to make it work better. So CEPA, which is Indo Japan bilateral trade, in our view, what actually is required, and it's already under discussion, is a revival of CEPA. It has, unfortunately, it has outlived its life. 2011, the products which were listed, they're still there. Nothing has changed, no addition, no deletion. From 2011, even we forget everything else, the digital world has changed significantly. CEPA does not have any reference to digital commerce or digital services at all, as against the recently signed free trade agreements or discussed free trade agreements between India and other countries, where digital commerce has a chapter in on its own. So that is one reason that why there is a need for a revival of CEPA, and definitely Atmanirbhar Bharat, which is self-reliant India, because at the end of the day, the government's motto seems to be very clear. We are capable enough to manufacture any kind of goods as long as we have the resources which we have, plus the technology. So once the technology is there and once their kind of collaboration is there, basis that the Atmanirbhar Bharat or self-reliant India as a motto, as an objective, can be accomplished pretty well. I'm going to skip the data localization part. Just a quick liner that since 2015, Government of India is very particular that the data, personal data of Indian population residing in India should be stored in India. It started with Reserve Bank of India, then it went to the Securities Board of India, and now we will very soon have data protection laws to make sure that all the data resides in India. The reason that we don't know how that data gets exploited or used when it is stored outside India. I just have got 5 more minutes, so I'll rush through it. Now, certain few things briefly mentioned, that certain kind of BIS, Bureau of Indian Standards, and other technical certification. The reason and objective to put these 2 or maybe 3 slides is to make you aware what all is applicable or could be applicable depending upon the line of manufacturing you are involved, the goods you are importing, or the services you are exporting. So BIS, Bureau of Indian Standard, it has actually picked up steam since 2016. As I mentioned, as it stands today, the list is 3,000 plus products, and Government of India has recently issued another concept paper for public comments to asking the public to provide the details of any goods which can further be included or maybe excluded from the current list. The only solution to this BIS is the awareness. We have seen many a times the goods are already at the port of import, but the companies are not aware that BIS as a certificate has to be obtained. And BIS certificate, it takes at least 3 to 4 months. So we'll come to the patent question later, how many months does it take? But as far as BIS is concerned, 3 to 4 months bare minimum. Now look at the economics of this. My demurrage charges, which is keeping the goods at the port of import, they can very well go beyond the value of the goods. So the knowledge about the product is important. At the same time, it is equally important for the government to know which products to include. Classic example, steel industry. In steel industry, in 3 notifications, all steel products got covered under Bureau of Indian Standards. Out of those products, at least 15% of the products, we as a country, we do not have manufacturing facility at all. So when we are not manufacturing something, then the standards cannot be set up because we don't have the technical feasibility. So yes, as I mentioned, knowledge and awareness, and equally important, the procedural clarity that in case a certificate has to be obtained or submitted to the government authorities, how the process happens. I think tax laws. Most of you, many of you, or maybe every one of you must be impacted by tax laws, either income tax, indirect tax, corporate tax. So one of my favorite quote in this is that only two things certain in life: death and taxes. Government will collect taxes after death as estate tax, right? So taxes go beyond, unfortunately, beyond somebody's death. Having said so, in my professional experience and professional view, a certainty in tax laws is a critical, right? We are doing everything on front of ease of doing business, whether these are procedural requirements, document submission, single window clearance. But when it comes to tax, government is as innovative as the IT industry is. Today, IT industry has solution to every problem. The moment solution is there, government knows how to tax it, right? A recent example, and I keep quoting it, in Budget 2022, when Honorable Finance Minister announced levy of tax on cryptocurrency, income tax, right? The only question I had, at one side, we call it illegal, right? It's there in white papers, it's there in the law, everywhere we call it illegal. But we want 30% of your earnings without any adjustment of losses. Okay, so that is where I feel that the certainty in tax laws is critical, because it's not that we don't mind paying taxes. I'm hoping that everyone doesn't mind that. Nevertheless, it's that if I know how much to pay, I can determine my costing. If I don't know how much to pay, my costing will go haywire, and of course, the insolvency will begin. So Customs and Free Trade Agreement, way back in 2014-15, government came out with this whole thing that all goods imported from Free Trade Agreement, including Japan, wherever 0% duty benefit is availed, please follow Carota. These are customs rules where you have to prove and justify that the origin of goods is from the correct country, right? The conditions are so stringent that, to give an example from pharmaceutical industry, I have an API I am importing, say, from Malaysia. It takes me 6 months to get that API formulation approved from the ministry for 0% duty benefit. A small chemical formulation change will make this product different, and I will need another 6 months to get a new product registered, right? So conditions are stringent. Somewhere, as a country, we'll have to accept and adjust to the fact that yes, whatever I am declaring, it is correct. If not, government has time for another 5 years to take corrective actions. Corporate taxation on repatriation, that's another one, that when we look at the repatriation, either in terms of the dividend distribution, in terms of stake sale of the companies, the tax rates are quite high, and becomes difficult where the companies or the countries do not have the treaty benefit between country A and country B. Digital taxation is another one. The most important, which might interest many of you, is the recent taxation of employees on secondment. It's covered, I think, all over the print news media, and this is where I think the certainty comes into play. Secondment of services, it's not a new concept. It's going on literally maybe at least from 1990s, when the economy got opened up. Supreme Court has decided 4 months back that any secondment which is an employee of a group company coming from head office to India will attract service tax / GST. Now just imagine, those days service tax 15%, now GST 18%. So the cost of doing that work is automatically going up by 18%. The worst bit, this tax is just a cost. I cannot recover it because it's all within the group. I'm not charging it back to any of my customers or to my clients. So these are the situations where we feel that certainty in the tax laws will make a huge, huge difference. Last, maybe the penultimate slide. Now, what exactly is the way forward, right? We can all discuss it in closed door meetings or open forums like IJBCs, but the thing is that we need to have some sort of corrective action plan. It could be as small as secondment of services, as big as setting up any new manufacturing facility. The good part or the good news in our experience is that government is all ears to you. Any suggestion you have, either with respect to the industry or with respect to your particular company, you can always go into advocacy. If the demand is reasonable, definitely government is going to look at it. Another one is the national logistics policy, where recently government has announced pan-India connectivity from a logistics side. This is one of the pain point in the entire manufacturing cum supply chain, where because there are multiple break points in logistics, the movement of goods does not get complete. And data protection laws, I know many folks here from the IT industry. I'm sure you are doing everything right, but just keep an eye on the data protection laws. The last one were horrendous. They put entire obligation on the company. Let's see how the new law comes out. Hopefully by end of this month or early next month, we'll get the draft protection laws. The thing is, the challenge rather could be, nothing is illegal unless caught. This is what they say. But once someone gets caught and then you realize that, hey, the mistake has happened, the fines, penalties, and the impact on the board of directors, that is so big that no one should take that risk. It's better to be aware what you are doing in terms of the legal framework, but let's not be kind of unaware and see that, okay, we'll see as and when it happens. Okay, so I think this we can skip. It's not intentional, I'm trying to skip through. Yeah, well, so just 2 minutes ahead of my time, this is what we had on the Indo Japan bilateral trade. Just out of curiosity, one suggestion I would like to give, again basis our personal as well as professional experience. For the IT industry, what we have seen is very simple, right? And you can do maybe some kind of data analytics. Most of the successful founders or entrepreneurs, they would always have some sort of knowledge or awareness either on finance or on law. That gives them that extra edge, that how to handle a critical situation when a funding is happening, right? When a very small legal nuance comes out, as small as you are a startup into some services or goods, one of your distributor files a fraud case against you as a director of the company. So the suggestion would be to the academy and the university guys here, see if you can kind of inculcate that habit, not as a course curriculum. Course curriculum everyone will pass, but maybe in the first year, a week or 2 weeks internship with the finance professional or the lawyers. Just let them expose. That's going to really help everyone, not just the company, the individuals, and hopefully we'll have better professionals and entrepreneurs coming out our way. So this is what we had. Thank you so much. I know it's just before lunch, but we are good to wind up now. Yes, sir. Thank you. Sure, sir. Okay.
And I saw that you mentioned about jewelry exports, and we were looking for penetration into the Japanese market.
Right.
For jewelry and high-value gemstones and diamonds.
Yes.
Can you please elaborate about this sector? Because you mentioned about other sectors, but
Right.
you left out the jewelry sector. So I was just...
So maybe you are the rich one here amongst all of us, but let me just kind of give some brief about it. So when we look at exports from India to Japan, right, precious metals, jewelry items, and semi-precious pearls, including pearls, that is one of the big trading items between India and Japan. But when we compare or see last 5 years data, that export has been at the same levels, volume-wise as well as quantity-wise. So when we say that there is a potential in terms of the increase of exports from India to Japan, Japan's import bill is around 500,000 US dollars, in which India's share is less than 0.05%. Now, when I say that there is a potential, see, we are exporting similar things, maybe say US, EU, maybe Gulf or other ASEAN countries, but why not Japan? Because India as a country is known for its, quality jewelry items, either in terms of design or in terms of the rock solids thing. So that's where I feel that Japan can be explored. Again, you may know better, why not we have explored Japan as a good trading partner as far as the jewelry sector is concerned. Yes. Hopefully I'll be able to hear you. Thank you so much.
We have told it is a deficit. So overall also India's balance of trade is overall deficit. So I'm just going to take 1 minute only.
Sure.
So basically it will interest everyone that wherever enemy countries are there, and we are finding that more trade is there between the enemy countries. This we can analyze. But I have a suggestion to our this Consul General of Japan directly, that earlier we want to cure our balance of payment between India and Japan. So earlier we were exporting raw iron to England, then we changed to Japan, and we were importing steel from them, then China, and recently your figures have told that we have overtaken, US has overtaken. This is the first time it has happened. So one of the Consul General of China, he told 3 to 4 years back in 2015, that if you want to clear the disequilibrium between the balance of payment between India and China, you just have the steel industry here. We will make a tie-up. So the same suggestion I would like to give it to our Consul General of Japan, that a small country like South Korea, it is exporting more steel, and recently they have made a tie-up with Orissa. So similarly, we can make a tie-up with the Japanese steel company in India, so that at least some of the disequilibrium of balance of payment will be cleared. Secondly, now some years before, we were #1 in exporting roses to Japan, but our number has fallen down to second. And one of the officers in the APEDA, he had written that we should cure when Sharad Pawar was the agricultural minister, but none has done. Second option is that Kesher mango. We were exporting. Japan has given us a 4 crores machine also for that vapor heat treatment. They are helping us. We need to concentrate on the exports of our Kesher mangoes. And thirdly, grapes grape export should get space in Japan, because we are already doing well in Europe and England. So there is a problem of space. Because of space, we get lot of money. Green gold we can get. So some of the areas definitely we can think. And when enemy countries are doing better trade because of the businessmen, Japanese are friendly currently. We have to take more. This is just a suggestion to our Japanese Consul General.
Absolutely. Well noted. And I think the Consul General Office will definitely take note of that. Just on the grapes part, or rather the fruits part, you'll may be surprised to know that sake, which is local Japanese drink, that was restricted for import in India till 2021 end. Right? So what I'm trying to say is that all points really valid, but we don't know how the trade negotiations happen. And that is where, as we mentioned, the advocacy, right? We feel that, okay, something should be done. Let's put it out with reasonable and logical steps. Currently what we are doing for 2 of our clients, just a quick example, stamp duty on import of goods. Many states have 1 to 2% of stamp duty. There are 2 states who do not charge any stamp duty. So we are representing to the central government that make it same. Because what happens, the states which do not levy stamp duty on imported goods, that 1 to 2% can also squeeze the margins, right? Government is listening to us really carefully, and we are hopeful to get a solution. But wherever you feel that, okay, certain products should be allowed, or some space should be given, definitely you can reach out through IJBC to the consulate, and definitely to our government.
Good afternoon. Actually, I saw your presentation. It's mostly matching with the ideologies and the thoughts that I have. So I'm more actually getting in similar thoughts with you. See, I have one normal question in geopolitical view. See, Japan, if you remember in 2014 when the Modi government formed, in the starting of that formation of the government, if you saw, there was a lot of investment policies from Japan, that they were very much interested into $10 billion of investment into India and all. And then we saw that there is a decline in those investors that they had promised in the starting of the formation of 2014 government. So now in past few years, they have actually pulled back, and most of those investors have already stopped now. So when I saw your slide, actually the countries where we do not share a very good relation, like with China and US, in a geopolitical views I'm talking about, we have the same policies, industrial policies for every countries, right? So why is it that we have a good trade relation with China and US, but not with a friendly country like Japan? So that's a bit of concern that I'm having, because it's the same industrial policies or the taxes or everything.
Of course, yes. I would give my lawyer's view on that. right? Any investment, it's a contractual arrangement, right? So how quickly both the parties come to a conclusion, and that has to be a win-win situation, right? That could be the one reason that, there's a possibility that few of the investments, even though committed in say 2014, 2015, they have pulled back. Taxes, policies, regulation, everything remains the same, but no party would like to lose out the money because the money somewhere is of the company, right? So again, we don't know what could have gone wrong, because the other side of the story is, look at the infrastructure projects. The investment is much, much more than what was anticipated in 2014, 2015, right? So I would say that wherever the governments are involved, say Government of India and Government of Japan, things are moving forward. Infrastructure definitely, as a sector, it takes more time. The gestation period is many, many years. So you will see the money or investment coming slowly. But for other investment, it's a bilateral trade, right? Take a classic example of Ford. After so many years, they just have moved out of India, right? Because that was the arrangement between two parties. So we'll have to really kind of, see that how mutually beneficial we can make this trade relationship. Okay, because at the end of the day, any commercial or trade relationship, in my view, is trust-based. You have trust on the other party, it will definitely happen.
Yeah, that's what, so that's the same point I'm talking about. This same kind of policies is acceptable to US or China, but in case of Japan, the investments and everything gets stopped because of those policies and those kind of trade relations. I don't know why it starts and then it goes back.
Yeah,
Whereas with China, where we don't share a good relation, but our policies match and we do a good trade relation there.
Yeah, so I have my own personal and professional view on China, but I'll keep that aside, this being a public forum. But I think maybe we can connect with one of the Indian counterparties where the investment was pulled back, and we can understand from them. In my experience, I can tell you definitely some contractual term, because the money is not coming from Japan as a country. Japan and India, they are just facilitating, right? At the end of the day, the parties have to agree. So there could be something more to the eye or what we see. So hopefully someday, in case I come across someone, I'll definitely come back to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so this was the last question, because it can go on and on. It was an interesting session. So thank you, Mr. Bhupendra, for this topic and for the discussion, for the presentation. But before you go, I would like to call Mr. Sudhir Jaiswal to facilitate Mr. Bhupendra Singh.